Andrew Yang has left the Democratic Party. And as Brandon Strzok pleads guilty for his role in the January 6th insurrection, there's clearly a vacuum in the walk away community. And Andrew Yang seems to want to take it because the People parties, they're a mess, right? They're not taking this. They're focused on screaming at images of AOC until they get hoarse. And Yang, he went on Tucker Carlson's program to step up in that area. He was on his Fox Nation show for an hour-long interview to promote this new third-party venture. Okay. I'm sure it's a part of a money-making venture for him as well, because he just has no home in the Democratic Party anymore. And a gleeful Tucker Carlson was quite excited to have this former Democratic presidential candidate on, similarly to how he likes to have Tulsi Gabbard on, who is critical of the left but was a part of the left, as a part of, or the left, was a part of the Democratic Party, at least. He uses this as a way to promote his narrative that the Democratic Party has left a bunch of people. And seemingly, Andrew Yang was more than willing to at least go along with that narrative on his program. Here's how Tucker Carlson promoted it on his nightly show, and then we'll get into a clip of what actually happened on the program.
Democratic Party, of course, embraces that, is refusing to do anything about what's going on in our cities. And that's driving people out of the Democratic Party. Liberal people who look at that and they say, I'm sorry, I may be liberal, but that's just freaking nuts. I'm not for that. One of the people who's reached that conclusion is Andrew Yang, pretty liberal guy, but an interesting guy and a smart guy. We sat down with him for an hour recently, a brand new episode of Tucker Carlson today. It comes out tomorrow. And we talked about his decision to leave the Democratic Party. Why? Here's part of it.
We're never going to make progress if we're not willing to talk to each other. And that's what the Forward Party is going to be about. I ran for president as a Democrat. I'm now an independent. I will talk to anyone who wants to actually make our lives better and solve the problems that are getting worse around us. We do not have unlimited time. This country is not doing well. You're a parent, I'm a parent. We have to try and make this country stronger and more whole for our next generation, or we will have failed them.
Stronger or more?
Yeah, it's really simple. I mean, it was Yang when he ran for mayor of New York, didn't win, but he got attacked for noting there were a lot of mentally ill homeless people attacking old ladies on the street. Not allowed to say that.
Maybe I'm being unfair, though. Maybe that was just a snippet of the interview that was helpful for Tucker Carlson's framing there. Maybe Yang, just like Jimmy Dore, just like Tracy and all of these types, maybe he went on to bring left ideas to the Tucker Carlson program. Maybe he went on there and he contradicted his white nationalist talking points instead of validating them, right? That's probably what happened. That's what Tucker producers do. They pick out people who are going to be adversarial to Tucker Carlson's project. That's exactly what happens. Just kidding.
It's hard to address this because people inject race into it. It has nothing to do with race. It has to do with labor. So, what's the answer?
There's this whole rung of opportunities in the economy that Americans don't want to do. And those jobs right now are being filled by immigrants. And you can see that up and down the agricultural industry for sure. Where I live in New York City, there are a lot of delivery jobs and chef jobs and a bunch of other jobs that are being filled by immigrants right now.
For sure.
So there's this whole rung of opportunities. Now, what's the right number? What's the right balance? I think that you'd have to do a lot more work to figure out whether we're getting it right.
I don't hear anybody even thinking about the calculation. I don't hear a single person. I mean, the objections that people have to immigration are mostly cultural. And we could argue whether those are legitimate. I have those reservations, I'll be honest. But my main reservations are economic. So I don't hear many attacks on our immigration system from the right from an economic perspective. Like, what are these people going to do? Will this make us richer or poorer? And I don't even hear this conversation taking place at all on the pro-immigration side. So, why?
Well, I'm the son of immigrants myself, and my father got his PhD in physics from Berkeley and generated 69 U.S. patents for GE and IBM.
Yeah.
So there's a class of immigrants that I think are awesome for the country, and hopefully will end up driving a ton of value. And I remember when I was talking about this on the Democratic debate stage, and I said something to that effect, and then someone said, "Hey, Andrew, FYI, you're not your parents aren't the typical immigrants we're talking about. So I think it is a question that we should, again, try and take ideology out of, is that a modern country should have policies on immigration that are trying to enhance our overall well-being. There's a human rights perspective that I certainly appreciate a great deal, because people want better lives, and immigrants do end up adding economic value in most cases after a generation or two. But you have to have practical approaches that try and balance a number of concerns.
Yeah, economic value. That's the only reason for immigration is who can generate the most capitalist value. It's like a sociopathic way to, and then he fed into Tucker's framing that there are some immigrants that are helpful to American capitalism, but there are some that are,
Yang embodies what Tucker Carlson is supposedly really afraid of. He has exactly that mindset, I think, about, and I haven't seen Tucker Carlson talk about, for instance, this Verge story, revolt of the delivery workers exploited by apps, attacked by thieves, and protected by police. The city's 65,000 bikers only have themselves to rely on. I haven't seen a lot of let's unionize the gig workers that these people are. It's let's throw them out of the country. That's Tucker Carlson's solution. So, I mean, it's totally craven that Yang would go on the show, but I would rather him go on Tucker's show than be all over ostensibly left-wing media drawing that attention. I think if he wants to be a third-party guy and draw attention from the right, that's fine.
I love that line he said of the there's a certain class of immigrants that are awesome for the country. I think he said something like that. Obviously, when you say that, you're also saying that there is another class of immigrants that aren't. And for Andrew Yang, who is that great class of immigrants that we want to welcome? Oh, those people that provide value, such as patents, developing patents for IBM and these other big like technology companies. What value does that really give for? I mean, we know how patents are used, right? Like we know what patents are used for. Patents really don't add value for you or me. They add value to that company, so that company can make sure that if anyone even infringes on, if they seem to infringe on that patent, they stamp down on whatever technological advancement that Yang would be so positive for, right? I mean, that's the kind of wonderful value that that certain class of immigrants are giving to us, according to Yang. And well, I mean, his belief on that, by the way, is shared by a lot of tech CEOs. Whenever they make deals and get involved with the government in terms of immigration fights, they always make sure that whatever the final package is, they get a nice little carved out section for their tech immigrants, the technology, the developers, the engineers. They make sure they get right through so they can get some cheaper, I should say, because they're still getting paid a lot, cheaper labor.
No, absolutely. And I mean, it's all about the return on investment for immigrants in his mind. But I don't understand how the first part of his statement tracks to the second, because ultimately he said, the only immigrants he referenced there are ones who have jobs. Like he just said in the beginning that, immigrants coming up here, they're taking all our jobs in the gig economy away from like Americans who just don't want to do them. But like there was no immigrant in his example that didn't have like a job. We're not talking about like immigrants who are coming over to commit crimes, even in his own interpretation, just ones who are not like having a high class of tech labor job. And when we see, liberals usually go into the media talking about immigrants, they usually carve out that exclusion for people who are doing service-based jobs as well. But this seems to be about like drawing not only a divide between like the working class immigrant and the working class American, but also making the classist point that like Americans are just too lazy to work these jobs. And if you weren't filling them with, immigrant populations, then some of these Americans would just have to get up and, start delivering food, et cetera, et cetera. So, I mean, it's weird to me that he gets through all of these points without fully understanding that every immigrant he's talking about is contributing to the economy in a way, that is distinct from, even the Americans in his example. Like, I think that ultimately this is just, at the end of the day, another vehicle to like launch a crypto. I'm surprised that he made it through the interview without dropping like Yang coin.
Yeah. And part of the like underlying assumption there, though, is that both Tucker and him do want there to be a class of immigrants that do those jobs, that don't have protections, that are abused on a mass basis, including in that like great article. I interviewed them for the Peacock show. Now I'm blanking on the name of it, but on delivery workers here in New York. They want them to exist, but they want to still demonize them at the same time so that they are subservient and remain in like this marginalized group of lower class of people who we can pay wages who deserve it because they're dirty immigrants.
Let's be clear about the faux labor concerns. ICE and border enforcement at large is a state program that helps boss discipline their labor force by saying, hey, if you undocumented person, if you don't do exactly what I say and even more, I am going to call ICE and they are going to get you the hell out of there. ICE and these people serve the bosses. These organizations and this increased border enforcement fervor that Tucker's whipping up is not scaring any of the bosses that are exploiting these people at all.
It gives them another tool in their toolbox.
It gives a
of
state
exploitation.
Tool.
Yeah,
a taxpayer-funded tool, goon squad that you can go send after your workers if, like I said, they aren't doing what you want. Increase
their insecurity and say we'll break up your family and send you back to a country that you fled, and if you don't like submit to.
Absolutely. The easiest way to help workers in America, they say not native workers versus immigrant workers, would be to raise the labor standards for everybody, and so like to allow immigrant workers to not have to operate within that realm of fear, which allows, bosses, capitalists to drive down wages. But that's just not an option for the right to argue for. So instead, it's just like, how do we divide the labor force, make one class of workers super precarious in order to like drive a wedge between them and, another class of workers who are even, just slightly less precarious.
Did you see that tweet that Andrew Yang sent out this morning? He's apparently quoting like what people have been saying to him about the Forward Party. And one of the quotes is, "You're giving radical centrists like me a home."
Radical centrist. Andrew Yang's a techno-libertarian. He doesn't even have like real ideas. Like that's why I'm like, this is a party that's going to eventually become like a vehicle for like blockchain, crypto style, like NFT style, like scamming. And,
that's how you make donations to the candidates that won't exist in this political party. Forward coin. Oh man! Wow.
You're giving radical centrists like me a home. Good. Of course, anti-democracy comes from the center. Yeah,
it's interesting too that I remember a lot of the Yang Gang said he was more progressive than Bernie Sanders.
Those were the liars known as Bitcoin bros.
Yeah, right. Basically. That's the emerging faction. We got the toll cells and Bitcoin bros. Please, we don't want you poisoning the left anyway. Goodbye.